Hello guys, Dominic again here with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about natural law and its role in the universe and how it relates to our lives as humans. So first, I want to read a definition from Mark Passio, who I would consider to be the best teacher today on natural law, at least in the West. There could be other ones around the world. So he says natural law is a universal, non-man-made, binding, and immutable conditions that governs the consequences of behavior. Natural law is a body of universal spiritual laws which acts as the governing dynamics of consciousness. Okay, so the key word there is consequences. Natural law can basically be summed up as cause and effect. The cause are our actions, which affect the natural world, and the natural world will receive our actions and generate consequences that are essentially the most fair that they can possibly be. So essentially, it is the fact that the universe operates a certain way, and we can choose to behave in a way that is in alignment with the way the universe operates, or we can choose to not to. So our actions are what we have control of, and we have control of our actions now, here in the present moment. But the moment that we have committed an action, or even during the moments where an action is being committed, consequences are being generated. These consequences are beyond humans, okay? So you can think of natural law as a roadmap to basically navigate the world. And we are free to look at the map and choose to adhere to the ways the map is telling us to go, or we can go right off the road and drive off into a cliff. We can go drive off into a forest. We can go drive off anywhere we choose, right? While we have the choice of determining where we go, which is our actions, the destination we do not have any control over. We don't have control over the fact that a cliff is a cliff, and if we go over it, we're going to fall and plummet. And depending on how high the cliff is, it could potentially lead to our deaths. So this is the difference between actions and consequences. Actions would be the act of driving, choosing to go where you want to. The destinations, once you reach them, will be the consequences of the actions that you chose to partake in. So if natural law is a roadmap, right? Where does natural law come from? Natural law essentially comes straight from God. And God, as I've explained in some of my other videos, is a force of freedom and will. So when you put those together, you essentially get free will. God is a force of free will, and natural law is the way that God has determined for itself is the best way to express its free will. And not only its free will, but to respect the free will of other beings. Okay? So, how did God come to this conclusion? God is essentially everything. Every quark, every atom, and every molecule, whether it's organic or inorganic. God is experiencing existence through every facet that there is to exist in or exist as. This means that God has come to realize its own principles from experiencing everything that has ever happened and everything that has ever happened, and formed its principles from essentially what is a perfect process of self-reflection upon these experiences that God can look at and say, this is the way to behave, this is the way to not behave. And the consequences are what comes about from that behavior. So God has learned that in order for the free will of each being to be allowed to properly express itself, essentially what it comes down to is harm must not be initiated unto that being. And this is basically the roadmap of natural law. It comes down to, are your actions causing harm to other beings? Okay. If your actions are causing harm to other beings, or if you are complacent with other people who are causing harm to other beings and you support them in your life, however you may choose to support them, you are in violation of natural law because you are either outdoing or supporting harm to other beings, which basically directly negates and interferes with another being's free will. Free will is the ability for a being to act and express itself in the objective universe, which we call the world. Every single one of us exists in the objective world as real living beings, just trying to live our lives the way we see fit. But when we begin to go to other beings, whether they're humans or whether they're animals, and we begin to interfere with their life because we want to take resources, or we think that they are, chaotic, we are in violation of natural law because we are forcing another being to react to our will as an initiator instead of letting the being act in a way in accordance with its own will. Free will is all about the freedom to express your will and manifest or generate consequences that you want to manifest because you chose to partake in certain actions that are going to manifest those consequences. So natural law, as some people will look to it as, oppressive, a way to keep humans down and subjected to a higher power or enslaved by a higher power. But this is not the case. Natural law are the principles God has set for itself based on the grand tapestry of experience, and we can choose to align to those principles or not align to those principles. The choice is all ours, either yes or no. And this is the gift of a loving God, a God who would allow its children, which is us, the freedom to make mistakes, the freedom to learn from our mistakes, the freedom to disobey, the freedom to do things that are not in our benefit or not in other people's benefits. The test is, because this whole experience is a large test, are we going to adhere or discover the principles that God has set for itself and live like God as man? Or are we going to go against that? And right now, there's a lot of people going against it. And not only are there people going against it, there are people who have taken it so far to the point where they have convinced millions of people to accept them as the God, or accept them as the ultimate expression of natural law. And we see this in the form of government and politicians, people who basically think that mankind has a right to create rules for itself and then enforce other humans to conform to those rules through violence and coercion. This is where humanity is at. And this is essentially rejecting the roadmap that God has created for itself in the form of natural law and making your own roadmap where you don't even, the people making the roadmap or the people writing the laws, they don't even understand that they could be driving off that cliff because, well, it's not there in their roadmap, but it's over here in God's roadmap that says, no, you shouldn't go that way, you should go this way. But, you know, you got these people, politicians, who basically just ignore that. So, basically, natural law is like the glue or the mechanism which ensures that things happen the way they should be happening. For example, a rich person who lives lavishly, right, or an aristocrat, they might have on the surface a life that seems orderful, or it might seem worthy, but these are just on the surface and what people see. What you don't see is all the harm that such a lifestyle creates to all the other beings that are affected by that lifestyle. If you want to actually form a life or live a life that's in alignment with natural law, you cannot make one that's based on taking from others. It needs to be based on sustainable growth, and it needs to be based on protecting life. Okay? Instead, people are focused on protecting their wealth or their physical property at the expense of their neighbor. And this is out of alignment with natural law. So, the reason that it's ultimately hubris to go against natural law is because when you choose to adhere to common law and say that this is right and this is what humans should be following, you are saying that we human beings who have a finite, limited perspective here on the earth, where we are mortal, we're going to die, and there was a whole lot of things that happened before us, we are saying that actually knows more than the intelligence that is behind everything. The intelligence that experiences literally every atom and every quark that exists. You can't know more than that. It's not possible, especially when you consider that you are a part of that. You're not separate from this intelligence, which is basically God. You are God. And when you choose to say that I know more so than this intelligence, you're ultimately going against yourself. And because you're going against yourself, you're going to generate negative consequences in the world that affect others around you, and maybe even people you've never even met, in a bad way, when a lot of the time that's easily preventable. But people are so fixated on the things that cause needless suffering. And I do say needless suffering because there is such a thing as good suffering or positive suffering. Needless suffering comes at the expense of other people and does not benefit them at all. All it does is put them through a traumatic experience and takes from them, takes their life, takes their property, takes their living space, their homes. Whereas proper suffering does the exact opposite. You're going through an experience of hardship, like building a house or growing a farm or even writing a book or a poem. You're going through this work, which might suck in the moment, but it's going to create something for other people that's going to help sustain their life. It's going to help them grow as an individual. This is where cause and effect comes in. Are you choosing to engage in actions that causes positive effects in other beings? Or are you choosing to engage in actions that affect negative consequences in other living beings? You see, if you go back to my last video where I'm talking about chaos and will, we human beings are basically the force of will, and we can choose to manifest order or chaos in our lives. The choice is entirely ours. God leaves it to us. It's not up to God. It's not up to the animals. It's not up to the trees. It's up to us as individuals to manifest this order or this chaos. And we can either choose to magnetically align ourselves with the principles that God, or the grand tapestry of all experience and the intelligence behind all that experience, we can choose to align with that, or we can choose to go our own way and, potentially drive off the cliff, or, maybe we'll find our way. But really, it's kind of like playing a cosmic game of whack-a-mole or find the needle in the haystack, where you're going to try through trial and error all these different ways, which clearly are not manifesting any positive changes in the world like we want them to, instead of adhering to the way of natural law and, generating positive effects in the world. Because as I said, it comes down to harm. So here's what basically makes harm. Harm is when you, as an individual, initiate violence, which is the violation of other beings' rights. You, as an initiator of violence, interfere with the free will and the being of another life form. That is what makes, or that's basically all that constitutes natural law, and that's all that, that's really the only actions that the intelligence of the behind all experience and all existence does not like. It does not like actions which violates the free will of other beings. Because when you are violating the free will of other beings, you are directly interfering with the free will of that superintelligence itself through that particular aspect of itself. So if you're going out there and you're, messing around with ducks or ants or wolves or animals or whatever, if you're out there interfering with their free will, you're basically, killing an aspect of God itself. You're out there restricting an aspect of God itself, When you go out there and you restrict your neighbor or you restrict your fellow human being, you are restricting an aspect of God itself. This is what free will is all about. It's all about each individual experiencing the world based on how they know how to and being free to do so. But when other beings come across that individual and they begin to interfere with that being's free will through the acts of violence, then they are generating negative consequences and they are interfering with the freedom of that being. And that is what makes it wrong, because no one has the right to interfere with the being of other life forms. Every being fundamentally has the right to be left alone. And that is something that humans have not been able to do. We don't want to leave each other alone. We don't want to leave other life forms alone. We want to be the ones who take and mediate and play God and try and create this false sense of order based in what other people think is right instead of what is actually right. Okay? And we know what is right is actually right because it is basically scientifically measurable. It is scientifically measurable, okay? For example, if someone were to shoot you or shoot me and I ended up dying, they have taken my life and I have no ability at that point to interact in the world at all as I am now. If you're out there assaulting other beings, like if you encounter someone on the street and you decide for whatever reason to whip out a baseball bat and assault that person with the baseball bat, you are going to generate objective, measurable, and observable consequences in the world which are going to affect that person who you assaulted in a negative way. You could break their bones. You could split their eyes open or their skull, and they might not see the same way. They might not hear the same way again because you, for whatever reason, decided to assault them. So natural law, it's not a belief system. It is a science that is observable and measurable. And with that, guys, I hope that you have a better understanding of natural law. And I'll see you guys again.